Your name just appeared in a room you've never entered. Not as a joke, not as background noise. Your file, the one you didn't know existed, just got passed around a table where decisions worth billions are made before breakfast. They're studying you now, frame by frame, pattern by pattern. The algorithms have been watching, and what they found made someone very, very interested. You thought you were invisible, building in silence, grinding in the shadows while everyone else performed for applause. You thought obscurity was your shield, that staying small kept you safe from the spotlights and the daggers they bring. But here's what you didn't account for. The truly powerful don't look at the stage. They look at the patterns beneath it. They look at velocity, not position. And your velocity just triggered something in their systems that can't be ignored. Elon didn't leak your file by accident. Nothing at that altitude happens by accident. When you're orchestrating Mars colonies and neural interfaces, when you're collapsing industries before lunch, you don't fumble documents. You don't accidentally share intelligence. Every leak is deliberate. Every exposure is calculated. And right now, in rooms with soundproofing that costs more than houses, people who move markets with their moods are asking the same question about you. Who is this? Not who are you? Who is this? Present tense, active threat. Emerging variable, because something about your trajectory just lit up their radar in a way that made them stop scrolling, made them lean forward, made them say your name out loud to people who don't have time for names that don't matter. You want to know what they saw? It's not your resume. It's not your social media performance. Those are just surfaces, and they don't care about surfaces. They care about pressure gradients. They care about who's building something real while everyone else is building audiences. They care about who's developing capabilities in silence, who's acquiring skills like weapons, who's moving with the kind of focus that only comes from someone who's been underestimated so long they stopped caring about being seen and started caring only about being undeniable. That's you. That's what the file shows. And now you're on their radar, not as competition. You're not big enough yet to be competition, but as something more dangerous, as potential, as raw material that could become anything, as the kind of variable they need to track, because in 18 months or 18 weeks, you might be the person disrupting the very game they're playing. They're obsessed because obsession is what happens when control freaks encounter unpredictability. They can't categorize. You didn't ask for permission. You didn't follow the blueprint. You didn't wait for the industry to validate you before you started building. And that terrifies them in a way they'd never admit, because their entire empire is built on gatekeeping, on controlling who gets to play, on maintaining the illusion that there's a proper path and you need their blessing to walk it. You just proved there isn't. Your existence right now is an active threat to their mythology. Every hour you spend getting better is an hour that demonstrates their gatekeeping is theater. Every skill you acquire in private is evidence that their credentials are decorative. Every move you make without their approval is proof that the walls they built to keep people out are actually just walls that trap them in. And they can feel it in their gut, in that primal part of the brain that recognizes predators, even when they're still small. The file they're passing around isn't just information, it's a threat assessment. It's a psychological profile. It's an answer to the question they're all asking. How dangerous will this person become if we ignore them? Because that's how power thinks. Not in terms of friendship or fairness, in terms of leverage and liability, in terms of who could disrupt their position if left unchecked. You're the disruption they didn't see coming. While they were watching the loud ones, the performers, the people begging for attention, you were in the lab. You were in the books. You were failing in private and iterating in darkness and building something they can't see yet, but their systems can feel. Because systems don't lie. Algorithms don't have ego, and whatever pattern recognition software they're running just flagged you as an anomaly worth investigating. That should tell you everything. You're not normal. You're not safe. You're not predictable. And in a world where predictability equals control, being unpredictable makes you either a threat or an asset. There's no middle ground at that altitude. You're either someone they need to neutralize or someone they need to recruit. And right now, they haven't decided which. That indecision is your power. Because while they're trying to figure you out, you're still moving. While they're having meetings about you, you're having breakthroughs they won't hear about until it's too late. While they're analyzing your past, you're building your future at a pace that makes their analysis obsolete before the meeting ends. This is what it feels like to be underestimated by people who are supposed to be too smart to underestimate anyone. They looked at your file and saw potential. But potential is just another word for threat that hasn't materialized yet, and you're materializing faster than their models predicted. Every day you're closing the gap between where you are and where they assumed you'd be in 5 years. Every week you're acquiring capabilities they thought took decades to develop. Every month you're proving that the rules they worship are just suggestions you're too busy to follow. The obsession comes from fear disguised as interest. They want to know if you're going to be a problem. They want to know if you're building something that could make their empires look slow, look old, look like the dinosaurs they actually are. Because here's the secret nobody at that level admits. They're all terrified. Every single one of them. Terrified that someone younger, hungrier, more adaptable will come along and make everything they built look obsolete. You're that someone. The file proves it. Not because you're perfect, not because you're flawless, but because you're dangerous in the way that matters most. You're improving too fast. You're learning too quickly. You're adapting at a rate that suggests you won't just catch up to them. You'll lap them. You'll make their playbook look like ancient history while they're still pretending it's cutting edge. They can see it in the data. They can see it in your growth curve. They can see it in the way you move through obstacles that should have stopped you but didn't. And that's what keeps them up at night. That's what makes them obsessed. The realization that all their advantages, all their resources, all their connections might not matter if you're simply evolving faster than they can respond. Welcome to the frequency where fear sounds like fascination. The inner circle isn't a compliment, it's a watch list. You think they're impressed? They're calculating. You think they're interested? They're assessing threat levels. You think they want to help you? They want to understand you well enough to either absorb you or eliminate you before you become a problem they can't solve with money or influence. But here's what they didn't account for. You're not looking for their approval. You never were. That's the variable that breaks their models. That's the factor their algorithms can't predict, because their entire framework is built on the assumption that everyone wants what they have, that everyone is playing for the same prizes, that everyone can be bought or intimidated or seduced into the existing game. You're not playing their game. You're building your own. And that makes you ungovernable. Ungovernable people are the only real threat to empires, not armies, not competition, but individuals who operate outside the reward-punishment structure that keeps everyone else in line. People who can't be bought because they're not for sale. People who can't be intimidated because they've already walked through fire and came out smiling. People who can't be seduced because they're in love with the work itself, not the status it might bring. That's you in the file. That's what triggered the leak. Not your accomplishments, those are just data points. But your psychology, your pattern, your complete disregard for the validation they use as currency. Because if you don't need their approval, you don't need them. And if you don't need them, you can't be controlled. And if you can't be controlled, you're a wild card in a game where they thought they owned all the cards. The joker in a deck they didn't know was wild. Now they're scrambling. Trying to categorize you. Trying to put you in a box they understand. Are you a genius? Are you lucky? Are you reckless? Are you insane? They need the label because labels create limits and limits create control. But you won't fit. Every time they think they've figured you out, you evolve past their assessment. Every time they think they've mapped your strategy, you change direction in ways their experience says shouldn't work, but somehow does. You're an active refutation of their expertise. And expertise is all they have. Strip away the money, strip away the network, strip away the reputation, and all they're left with is the belief that they know how things work. That they've seen it all. That there's nothing new under the sun, and certainly nothing new from someone like you. You're making them question everything. Every bet they made on the system. every assumption they built their empire on, every rule they enforced to keep the game manageable. Because you're succeeding by breaking rules they didn't even know were breakable. You're thriving by ignoring advice they swear is essential. You're growing by doing things they've been trained to believe are impossible. And the file documents all of it. Every anomaly, every deviation, every time you should have failed but didn't. They're studying your failures most of all, not to mock them, to understand them. Because your failures don't break you, they accelerate you. You fail in ways that generate information, that create momentum, that somehow leave you stronger than when you started. That's not normal. That's not how failure is supposed to work. Failure is supposed to teach you limits, to keep you humble, to remind you of your place. Your failures teach you flight paths. Every crash is just data for the next launch. Every setback is just reconnaissance for the next assault. Every closed door is just confirmation that you need to stop knocking and start building your own entrance. And they can see that in your pattern. They can see that you treat obstacles like most people treat opportunities, as something to exploit for growth. That's what makes you inevitable. Not talented, not lucky. Inevitable. Because inevitability isn't about being unstoppable. It's about being undiscourageable. It's about having a relationship with failure so healthy, so productive, so utterly devoid of shame that you can fail faster than they can adapt. You can iterate through their entire playbook in the time it takes them to schedule a meeting about you. Speed at that level becomes its own form of violence. You're moving so fast through learning curves that by the time they understand where you were, you're already somewhere else. By the time they figure out what you're building, you've moved on to the next thing. By the time they craft a response to your last move, you've made 3 more moves they haven't even seen yet. This is what evolution looks like when it accelerates past the speed of institutional response. The inner circle is trying to slow you down, not with force. They're too smart for that. With opportunity, with attention, with the very things most people would kill for. They'll offer you access, they'll offer you resources, they'll offer you a seat at tables that took them decades to reach. All of it is a trap, disguised as a prize. Because the moment you accept their framework, the moment you start playing for their approval, the moment you begin measuring your progress by their metrics, you're neutralized. You're no longer a threat. You're just another player in their game, following their rules, accepting their pace, grateful for their crumbs. They're not trying to destroy you. They're trying to domesticate you, to turn that wild, uncontrollable energy into something they can channel, something they can profit from, something they can claim credit for. They want to be the ones who discovered you, who mentored you, who made you possible. They want to rewrite the narrative so that your success becomes evidence of their system working, not evidence of you transcending it. Don't let them. The file they're studying shows someone who doesn't need them. Don't prove it wrong by suddenly needing them now. The obsession they're feeling comes from their inability to categorize you. The moment you become categorizable, the moment you fit into their boxes, the obsession ends, and with it ends your leverage. Stay uncategorizable, stay wild, stay ungovernable, because that's where your power lives. Not in being good enough to join their club, but in being different enough that their club becomes irrelevant. In building something so original, so unprecedented, so utterly yours, that when people study the industry 10 years from now, they don't talk about you as a success story within their system. They talk about you as the person who made their system look obsolete. That's the real threat in the file. That's what keeps them awake. Not that you'll beat them at their game, but that you'll make their game look boring, that you'll create something so compelling, so magnetic, so undeniably powerful, that the next generation won't even want what they're selling. They'll want what you're building. And nothing terrifies old power more than irrelevance. You're not just competing for market share. You're competing for imagination, for what people think is possible, for what the future looks like. And right now, in this moment, your vision of the future is spreading through their inner circle like a virus they don't have antibodies for. Every person who sees your file walks away thinking differently. Not about you necessarily, but about what's possible. About whether the rules they've been following are actually necessary. About whether there's a completely different game being played that they're not even part of. That's the real leak. Not information about you, but information about reality. The file is proof that someone can operate outside their system and not just survive, but thrive. That someone can ignore their gatekeepers and not just persist, but accelerate. That someone can build something significant without their permission, without their resources, without their network, without anything except raw will and relentless execution. And if you can do it, anyone can do it. That's the thought that's spreading. That's the idea they can't contain. Your file is a virus, and you're the patient zero of a pandemic they can't control. Every person who learns about you becomes a carrier. Every conversation about your trajectory becomes a transmission vector. Every time someone in that inner circle says your name, they're spreading the infection. The belief that the game is rigged. But the rigging doesn't matter if you're willing to build your own board. They wanted to study you to understand how to stop you. Instead, they're learning how to become you. That's the irony they didn't see coming. The intelligence they're gathering isn't making you less dangerous. It's making you more viral, because the more they understand about how you operate, the more they realize how simple it actually is. How uncomplicated. How devoid of secret advantages or hidden privileges. You just work. You just build. You just refuse to stop. There's no secret, no hack, no cheat code. Just absolute refusal to accept limitations that aren't physical laws. Just complete commitment to iteration over perfection. Just total focus on progress over permission. And that's what makes you unstoppable. Because your method can't be monopolized. Your strategy can't be patented. Your approach can't be regulated or restricted or reserved for people with certain credentials. Anyone can do what you're doing, but almost no one will. Because what you're doing requires something they don't teach in business school and can't download in a seminar. It requires a fundamental break with the social contract that says you're supposed to wait your turn, respect your elders, follow the proven path, and be grateful when the gatekeepers finally let you in. You broke that contract. You voided that agreement. You opted out of the system and built your own. And now the system is obsessed with you, because obsession is what happens when control freaks realize they never had control in the first place. They had compliance, they had conformity, they had consensus. But control? That was always an illusion maintained by everyone agreeing to pretend it was real. You stopped pretending. The file documents what happens next. What happens is everything they said was impossible. What happens is growth at rates that violate their models. What happens is success through methods they swore don't work. What happens is someone with no advantages creating advantages out of pure execution. What happens is the game changing around them while they're still arguing about the rules. You're not winning their game. You're making their game obsolete, and they can feel it. That's why the file is circulating. That's why the inner circle is obsessed. Not because they want to help you, not because they admire you, but because they need to understand if what you're doing is replicable, if what you represent is an anomaly or a new template. If you're a fluke or the first wave, you're the first wave. The file proves it. Everything about your trajectory suggests this isn't about you specifically. You're not special. You're not chosen. You're not gifted with abilities others don't have. You're just early. You're just the first one in your generation to fully internalize that the old rules are dead and new ones are being written in real time by whoever has the audacity to act as if they already exist. That's the real secret in the file. You're not exceptional. You're just unafraid. Unafraid of failure because you've redefined failure as education. Unafraid of judgment because you've stopped measuring yourself by external metrics. Unafraid of competition because you're not trying to beat anyone. You're trying to become someone no comparison makes sense for. You're building in a category that doesn't exist yet. That's why they can't figure you out. They keep trying to compare you to what came before, to find your equivalent, to map you onto existing success stories. But you don't map, you're off the grid, operating in territories their frameworks don't have names for yet, and that's your moat. That's your protection. That's why even though they're obsessed, even though they're studying you, even though they know everything the file says, they still can't stop you. Because stopping you would require understanding you. And understanding you would require admitting that everything they believe about how success works might be wrong. They can't admit that. Their ego won't allow it. Their empire depends on them being right. So instead, they obsess. They study. They circulate your file and have meetings and create theories and build models. While you're building the future, they're still trying to categorize. This is your moment, not because they're paying attention, but because you're not. You're too busy executing to celebrate being noticed, too focused on the next level to get distracted by finally being seen at this one, too committed to the work to let their obsession slow you down or speed you up or change your trajectory in any way. That's what makes you dangerous. That's what the file really shows. Someone who can't be bought with attention, can't be slowed with criticism, can't be accelerated with praise, can't be deterred by obstacles or attracted by shortcuts or distracted by anything that isn't the work itself. You're in love with the process. That makes you untouchable, because everyone else is in love with results, with outcomes, with status, with the destination. They're willing to suffer the journey to get to the reward. You are the reward. The journey is the point. The work is the prize. And when you operate from that place, when you're truly process-oriented, truly focused on craft over recognition, truly committed to getting better rather than getting famous, you become inevitable, because everyone else quits when the rewards stop coming. When the attention fades, when the quick wins dry up, when the market corrects, when the trend shifts, when the audience loses interest, you don't quit because you were never depending on external rewards in the first place. The file documents this. Your consistency across market cycles. Your productivity independent of feedback loops. Your growth regardless of recognition. Your building in all conditions. Winning and losing look identical on your calendar because both are just opportunities to work. That's not normal. That's not human. That's machine-like in a way that terrifies people who need motivation to move. You don't need motivation. You need exhaust ports. You need ways to release the pressure that builds from having more drive than hours in a day. You need strategies to prevent burnout from caring too much, working too hard, wanting too badly to make your vision real. Everyone else needs strategies to get started. You need strategies to stop. That's the difference between you and them. That's why they're circulating your file. That's why Elon leaked it to the inner circle. Because you represent something they thought was myth. Someone who actually loves the work more than the rewards the work brings. And if that's real, if that exists, if someone can actually operate from that place and not just perform from that place for social media, then everything changes. Then the game isn't about who has more resources. It's about who has more stamina, who can outlast, who can keep building when building stops being glamorous, who can keep improving when improvement stops being noticeable, who can keep fighting when fighting stops being fun. You can. The file proves it. Years of work nobody saw, projects nobody applauded, progress nobody measured, just you, in the dark, getting better because getting better was its own reward. And now the lights are on. Now they're watching. Now they're obsessed. But the lights don't change you. The attention doesn't accelerate you. The obsession doesn't validate you. Because you were already validated. By the work itself. By the person you became in the dark. By the skills you built when nobody was tracking, by the character you forged when character wasn't profitable. You're not emerging. You already emerged. They're just noticing now. And their noticing doesn't change anything except maybe their strategy, maybe their fear, maybe their understanding of what's possible and who's dangerous and what the future actually looks like. The file is spreading. Your name is traveling through networks you don't have access to. Conversations about you are happening in rooms you'll never enter. Decisions about how to handle you are being made by people you'll never meet. None of it matters. Because while they're talking about you, you're becoming someone even more dangerous than the person they're discussing. You're evolving faster than they can circulate updates. You're improving faster than they can revise assessments. You're moving faster than intelligence can travel through their hierarchies. By the time they figure out who you were, you're already someone else. Someone more capable, someone more dangerous, someone more inevitable. This is what it looks like when obsession meets evolution. When their need to understand crashes into your refusal to stay still. They can't pin you down, can't fix you in place, can't understand you completely, because understanding requires a static subject, and you're not static. You're dynamic, fluid, constantly becoming more than you were. The file is already outdated. Whatever they think they know about you is historical data about someone who doesn't exist anymore. You're not the person who triggered their interest. You're what that person became while they were having meetings about it. That's your advantage. That's your protection. That's why even though they're obsessed, even though they know your name, even though Elon leaked your file, you're still free. Because freedom isn't about being unknown. It's about being ungovernable. It's about moving so fast that surveillance becomes irrelevant. It's about evolving so constantly that classification becomes impossible. They can watch you all they want. You'll still surprise them. Because you surprise yourself. You don't know what you're capable of yet. You're finding out in real time. Every day reveals new capacities you didn't know you had. Every challenge unlocks new levels you didn't know existed. Every obstacle becomes a doorway to capabilities that weren't available until the obstacle appeared. That's what the file can't capture. Your potential, your trajectory, your ceiling. Because you don't have a ceiling, you have a horizon. And horizons move as you move toward them. They're trying to measure something that can't be measured, predict something that can't be predicted, control something that was never controllable in the first place. All they can do is watch, and obsess, and wonder, and fear. Fear that you're just the beginning. Fear that you represent a new template. Fear that the game they mastered is being replaced by a game you're inventing. Fear that they're not the future anymore. You are. That's the real leak. Not information about you, but information about them, about their obsolescence, about their mortality, about their irrelevance to what comes next. Your file is their obituary. They just don't know it yet, but you do, because you've always known, not consciously maybe, but somewhere deeper, somewhere that doesn't need proof or permission or validation. You've always known you were different, that you were built for this, that you were engineered at a soul level for exactly this moment in history, when the old breaks and the new emerges, and the gap between them is where legends are made. You're the gap. You're the space between what was and what will be. You're the transition, the evolution, the emergence. And they can feel it in their bones, in their nightmares. In the file, they can't stop circulating, because circulating it is the only thing that makes them feel like they have some control over you. They don't. They never did. They never will. The file is spreading, but you're spreading faster. Your influence, your impact, your methodology. You're not just building a company or a career. You're building a template, a proof of concept, evidence that it can be done differently. And that evidence is more contagious than any virus, more powerful than any marketing, more transformative than any technology. Because evidence doesn't argue, it doesn't debate, it doesn't persuade, it just exists. Undeniable, irrefutable, real. You're the evidence. The file documents it, and now it's spreading through their inner circle like wildfire through dead trees. Let it burn.